Welcome to Superangel's next Flash webinar. Today we are talking about business intelligence, and I'm really happy to have Mari Hermanns here.
Hi, Kalle. Thank you very much for having me.
And as always, we collected some questions from the audience, and I'm going to share them with you. So roughly, we have questions from focus of business intelligence, how early to start with it, what's the point and when, how to start it, what are the right KPIs, what are the right tools, how to deal with data measurement and models, how to mix different data sources, how to implement it in your company, how to do forecasting when you are a small startup with new revenues, what are the best sources of business intelligence to learn about it. So this is the main topics are in the beginning. So the focus of our discussion with Mari would be also about how to start. But before we go there, I listened to one of the presentations Mari made about insights about doing business intelligence in Solaris Bank, which she helped to build up from scratch, both company and the business intelligence unit. So what I picked up from there was that basically, if you start building your business intelligence in your organization, it starts from expectations. That what do you want business intelligence to do, and best way to do it is to ask different departments or functions at what kind of KPIs they need in order to grow, learn, make better decisions. Is your tech team going to be part of building up business intelligence infrastructure or not? What are the management expectations going from what's the role they see the business intelligence should have in an organization? What are their KPIs which they use to make decisions? Like if the question is what product to focus on or what functions to develop, what kind of data they would need in order to make these decisions? And do they want just descriptive analytics, or they see that statistical regression analysis could be also done in that organization? And you should also, if you are a little bit further and you start to build your business intelligence team, you should build a vision that in case of Solaris Bank, the business intelligence was a cross-functional team, and the aim was to make the data as a core competence of the company. Which means that based on this vision, you could build the priorities, you could put the milestones, where do we want to be at what point, because you can't do it all with Flash. If you have that expectations, then you can start about thinking about how you want to develop your business intelligence over time, because the more difficult tasks you can do, the more value you create, going from descriptive analytics, that what happened, and just putting down the measurements about measuring some KPIs, up to a prescriptive, that in the morning we measure, and in the evening we can already make some decisions or prepare or propose some suggestions what to do. If that's clear, where you want to go, what's your target, then you can start about selecting those tools. And in that video, Mari suggested to use a simple scorecard. Basically list all the tools, what you have heard about, list the criteria for selecting or what the tool should do for you, and then evaluate on a scale of 1 to 3 or 1 to 5, is that tool doing this job or not? And the tools, if you're really building the business intelligence, the tools you need are about extracting data, then data warehousing, then storaging your data, visualization, how you visualize your data, and what are the outcomes of queries to the data warehouse, and language you're using for managing all this. And the last but not least, all the tools can be very cool, but without data culture in your organization, it probably is waste of money, because if data is not used in your organization, its return on investment would be very low. So how to build a data culture in your organization? First of all, team must be data literate. That people in your organizations should understand why is that data needed, what do different data elements mean. And as an example, Facebook has a 2-week data bootcamp where all the new employees will go over what data Facebook has, and they are ideating and brainstorming how to use this data even better. If you have data literacy, then next step is that the infrastructure, the tools you have, they should be easy enough that anybody can make queries, ask questions from a data warehouse. And it should be so easy that you can do it even during meetings. That if somebody has a question about, is it this or that, then you can pull up a query and get actual numbers. Another important item in building data culture is dictionary, that everybody should talk the same language. So active customers should mean the same thing in marketing, in product development, and in accounting. Data must be part in every important decision. So if you don't use the data, then all of this is pretty useless and doesn't have return on investment. And the business intelligence shouldn't be a bottleneck in the decision making, that the data should be available without any big delays, and the answers you get to the queries should be good enough that you can make decisions based on it. And in your organization, curiosity should be rewarded. That if everybody is more curious, then it's more likely that you would actually get some good insights, and people are curious about the data and come up with better solutions. A way to do it is kind of top down, that from beginning on, the management and the founders of a company should be enforcing this idea that the business intelligence should be the single source of truth. That anybody has any question, they go to make the query to the data warehouse, and everybody can and should use it. So this is my summary of Mari's presentation about how they built business intelligence in Solaris Bank. Did I miss anything?
No, absolutely not, Kalev. Bravo, very well done summary. Yes, it was I think a presentation a couple of years back, and it was actually quite a bit of research I put in there, because it's different thing when you are doing everything in practice and when you're reflecting on it. And I think that's why this webinar is also very special in this sense. But no, I think you gave a perfect summary, or these are my beliefs also today. So nothing has kind of aged. And I think this can be followed, very general advice. I wanted to maybe highlight some things. So for me, visions or purposes, or also missions, but let's focus on visions because we talked about it, are very important, not only for the teams. I believe that everyone, also individually, we should have visions, but also the teams and your company has a vision, right? And I think that's also one of the one of the bases for developing KPIs and also kind of developing business intelligence on it. And I think this is an important point generally for the whole company, and is helping a lot for the employees to be connected, but also for the business intelligence, and I guess also for other teams to be able to focus and to be able to kind of cover the right things. This has also helped me in my previous life.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and also one important part that you showed, and maybe I would like to comment a little bit further on this, was this Gartner framework from the descriptive analytics to prescriptive analytics. And actually this is so far I have been leading BI teams, and so much I have been in touch with all the other teams. This is actually a very normal development for business intelligence to keep in mind. So very often it starts from descriptive analytics. So very often it is just communicating the KPIs, getting some insights, and it's a very normal process to kind of put them more effort and also investment or money in there in order to develop it into something that is very actionable and that you can kind of implement right away. So I think for every business intelligence person, it speaks to you, and I think for the company, it's a good tool to understand how the team develops and what is the fit inside the company. Mm-hmm. Yes, so just wanted to comment on these two things that you already mentioned and summarized very well yourself.
So we had a lot of questions about how to start. So let's say that we have a company vision, we want to grow, and we also like your version of business intelligence, that we want to make decisions based on data. Then the next question is KPIs. But what the heck I'm going to measure? And yes, okay, I have this different products. I have some revenue, I have some costs, but my question is that which product I should focus on, how to set up the KPIs in such way. And we have had also one question as from Upsteam, from Superangel portfolio, who does the car washes locally, that through the app you can order them to your place and they do the car wash locally. So they have like 4 different targets. Like some are business to customers, businesses, others are business to businesses type of products. They have customers who pay per visit. They have customers who have subscriptions like MRR. So lots of mess, and also their revenue depends on how many guys they have out there. That the more guys they hire for washing, the more revenue they have in different locations. So quite a lot of stuff going on there. How would you tackle it? How would you, like in that particular case, 4 different products, business to business, business to consumer, growing team, how to set up the KPIs, or how to start thinking about KPIs there?
Yeah, good question and interesting case study for sure. So I think what is also very important is, like in everywhere, is to keep things simple. So although your business might be very complicated and difficult, I think it's the complexity grows over time when you have some ad hoc products, or you try out new things and so on, and you develop as a company. So the complexity grows for sure. But important is to keep things simple and understandable for you, and you can develop from there. So what I would always recommend when you're just a starting startup, you already have a product out there, and you want to start measuring things, then look at your business plan. So that's my first advice. Look at your business plan and look what are the main revenue drivers there. Is it the number of active customers? Is it the number of transactions? Is it the number of devices sold? Is it some ad clicks? So there are a lot of different business models that nowadays startups have and generally the companies. So think through what is your main revenue driver in your business plan, and that's actually something that you want to measure, because in the end of the day, we all want to make money, right? Or maybe we want to have certain attraction at this point of time. So therefore, this is the important metric. So again, what is your vision? What is your goal? And then look at, so you know your company the best, so you can actually see it normally from the business plan what it is that you have to measure. Maybe going back from the Solaris Bank example, we built the business plan when we had to apply for the banking license, when we didn't even know how to really do the banking as a service platform, because we were one of the pioneers. And we developed the business plan. So we had different products that we wanted to offer, and it was very complex. But until the end, so I'm not with Solaris Bank anymore, but I'm sure that even today, they're actually using those simple metrics that were in this business plan, and they're most telling you because they are actually your revenue drivers and very often also the cost drivers. So you want to minimize the cost drivers and also maximize the revenue main drivers then. So that would be one of the proposals that I would give, and how I would start myself if I would do it again. In this exact example about the apps team, you do have very different customer and product mix, and I assume that you have also different revenue and cost drivers in terms of those different customers even. But still, I think that your main revenue driver is the number of active customers, right? Mm-hmm. So this is actually something that is your key metric most probably. And yes, it divides into the subscription or monthly recurring customers, and those who are just coming back on ad hoc basis, which might most probably are not that interesting for you, but it depends how you define your customers and how you price them. But then from there, it's very interesting to go further, right? So what you want to do in order to improve the number of active customers. So then there are different conversion analysis that you can apply, and of course retention will be also very important for you to measure, because once you have the customer, most probably you spend quite a lot of marketing money on this. You want to keep the customer, not to do it again. So that would be my first guess if I was looking into this business model, but it could be also that maybe there is something else that I don't know yet. But yes, so business plan tells you a lot. Then there is another interesting concept that I have been using, but I think this is more to when you're really lost and you don't know how to actually develop the KPIs. There is from the management, there is an interesting framework like balanced scorecard method. So balanced scorecard just enables you to look at your vision, what you want to achieve again, through different perspectives, and you can develop those KPIs through those different perspectives, in like, for instance, financial perspective and customer perspective. So you can think of like how to reach this vision and analyzing those KPIs that are through those perspectives. So that's also one of the, maybe for the brainstorming exercise, if you really want to get deeper knowledge for your business, would be a good hint to use, and what has worked for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exactly. I'm also familiar with balanced scorecard and analyzed it from one and the other angle. And my suggestion for startups is also that use it, as Mari said, as a brainstorming tool. That don't try to implement it fully because you get overwhelmed.
That's true.
There are way too many measurements in all the balanced scorecard books. So use it as a brainstorming exercise. Cool.
Good point. Thank you for clarifying. I agree. I think one difficulty is to start up with a business intelligence. The other difficulty is to manage it so that it's not overwhelming and actually the data becomes obsolete and is not valuable for you anymore. So it's a good point about the balanced scorecard. I agree. Actually,
we had one question about more advanced business intelligence from more advanced business intelligence user. But hey guys, we have collected all kinds of data. It's getting messy. That's too much data. That's we are using Tableau to categorize it and keep it stuff simple, but it's still like getting messy. What's your suggestion in that case when things are getting, seems to be too much data and it's getting messy?
I would say that first of all, this company is in a good position. That means that you have a lot of data and you have the competence to analyze it a lot, and most probably you have also a lot of questions that you have been looking answers for in the company, and it has helped you. So that's why you have developed it. It's quite a normal thing that happens, and I think it's also like part of natural development part. So what to do in this case? Focus. So the idea is again to think through like what is the most important KPI for you, and again, like as I told you before, in order to develop them, business plan is it gives away, right? So it shows you what is the most important metric in order to increase the revenue, which is anyway most probably the goal of a company, and you should focus on this, and then you can develop the supporting dashboards or supporting mechanisms in order to improve the most important KPIs that you have chosen. And regarding the most important KPIs, normally it's maybe 3 up to 5. So because human brain just can't take more. I mean, you can be a power brain, but still it's important to focus on 3 to 5 main metrics, and also communicate it to the whole company. And in order for the company then to be able to fulfill the goals and to improve the metrics that you have chosen for the company as a leader, the other dashboards are supporting and are helping, or should be helping, in order to fulfill the goal and in order to reach the goal that you have set for yourself.
So the 3 to 5 KPIs for the company doesn't mean that I shouldn't look at other metrics which are connected with this 3 to 5, but it's just that in different functions, in order to make right decisions, in order to improve these main focus KPIs, I might need some more detailed data
analysis. Yeah. Exactly. Such as when we give the previous example about the number of active customers, that's your main KPI, but the supporting KPIs would be registrations to onboarding or onboarding to active customers. So that's something that you want to look additionally in order to improve the KPI of active customers. So you want to see actionable KPIs and those that are actually showing you the health of your company.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. So we talked about that you take your business plan, you take the KPIs from there, which are the main things which move the needle, and probably it has to be something to do with active customers and maybe something with cost control in order to make your unit economics to work. Then what? Like we all know that Excel is a nice thing to start, but we also know that Excel has its limitations. That how to start that. With startups, you don't have many people. You probably can't hire a business intelligence person, analyst right away. So, but you want to like start the data gathering and be ready that if things become more complex, you have right data to make decisions based on.
Yeah, it's a question with many levels. So first of all, yes, when you start a company, and I've had, while being a consultant in FinLeap, I experienced this quite a bit with very early on startups. And what I realized often is that I can tell them, I can educate them about business intelligence, but there is no point to really set it up because they don't even know who is their customer and what is the product that they want to do. I think when the company is that far that you have an MVP launched and you're doing testing, then you can do already some business intelligence or analytics in order to see which product goes better to the market. I mean, you can also call it the business intelligence, but it's not business intelligence in its traditional way or how I have defined it for myself. So I think the interesting part or the real business intelligence starts, I mean, it still starts earlier, but like actually it will start once you have amount of customers or products, or I most probably still customers or transactions, that it becomes unmanageable and you can't understand anymore, or maybe simply said, if you don't know the life stories of every customer anymore, because that's something that you know definitely in the beginning. So let's say maybe it's like 1,000 customers, maybe it's a little bit less. It depends on the company. But I think then business intelligence is handy, and the professional setup of business intelligence. Of course, you can do early analytics in Excel, and I love Excel. It's a very powerful tool, but it doesn't, last for long once your data outgrows. So when you are just a starting startup, then what I've always recommended, I mean, again, you have definitely your business plan, right? So you already know what you want to achieve. So what are the KPIs that you want to measure and that you want to measure or that you want to reach? And I think this is, let's say that you have 100 customers that you want to have live, you can already kind of measure it. So that's not the problem. But you also have to think about the technical setup. I think your tech team should already think or have in mind that one day this data will be analyzed, and you can already think actually very early on how you want to analyze this data. Very often the startups want to have everything live, which actually from the analytics perspective doesn't always make sense, but it's a cool thing. So if you want this, then you also should kind of set it up properly. So your setup has to be appropriate so that you are creating maybe a copy of a live database for the analytics team. Yes, so basically these things have to be already taken into account. Everything should be measured. Whatever you can measure, data is the new code. So you have to, this is anyway something that you have to most probably keep in mind, that if you have a process, then all the process points should ideally be measured, and you should be able to get this data one day, and especially what concerns about your main KPIs. Now, when you are at the stage where you have done some analytics in Excel already and you want to move on from Excel because it just breaks every now and then when you try to refresh your pivot tables, then where I would start for sure is the data infrastructure. So basically, because visualizations, you can actually do really cool visualizations also already in Excel, and most probably you put them in PowerPoint in order to communicate with investor, and you already know those tools and you don't need to do too much learning about that. Ideally, there are somewhere else automatic, but I'll talk about it in a second. But the data infrastructure, how to get the data, how to clean the data, how to get the data in the cleaned way, that's actually normally what takes 80% of the business intelligence work anyhow. So to make sure that you have the right knowledge and you have the right basis to work with in order to give insights. And for that, I always recommend to build up a database. Now the newer word for that is data lake. But I guess if you're just a starting startup, then database is enough to know about. So basically a simple relational database. So you have all your data from different data sources have been migrated to the database, and for the analysts, they have either access to the whole database, or do they have access to the intelligent or to the business layer, basically. Intelligent layer. So basically databases have different layers. So first is the raw data layer, so exactly the data that is coming into the database. Then there's an intelligence layer where you can do, which is cleaned up and already like usable for you. And then finally the business layer, so already some KPIs have been built up and calculated or monitored in the database. But actually, to be honest, usually all the business intelligence people are knowledgeable enough to work with the raw data, and they can do their cleaning themselves and adjust it, or they actually like it, or based on my experience, we like it that we have means or tools to actually play around with a little bit with the data, have this responsibility to clean it up and also to put it into analytics. And for that, I think that for the data migration part, there is, the easiest is just to dump the data every day and then just upload it to the database. So that's something that I think you don't need to have too much technical knowledge for. But it's not automatic, it requires extra work, and normally in the business intelligence world, the only extra work that you want to do is to analyze the data. So you are basically doing all the work in order to automate the whole process. So usually you're using then a tool for that. So the visual tool for the for the Java-based code is, for instance, Talent open source that I have been using. So basically with visualizations, you can already set up how you want the data to be flowing to your data warehouse. The best tool for that is always, I'm favoring Python. So it requires a little bit of programming knowledge, but it's also something that you can learn quite simply, and it's a quite widely used tool. And normally also data scientists know this very well. So with the help with Python, you can actually put it to your data warehouse pretty simply and automatically. For the data warehouse, so the storage, I think, depends a little bit on your company, or are you a financial institution and you can't store it on AWS, you have to do it locally, or there is a different solution that you have found, or there is a cloud storage. And I think AWS has been quite a reliable partner in this sense. Might become too expensive at one point, but it's all about negotiating it as well. But I'm not a big expert on this. It's just like these are two methods that I have used and that I have experience with. And then I think that PostgreSQL for relational database is something that is very widely used, and something that can be actually used very well. And to the SQL queries, it's not a it requires some knowledge and requires some learning, but it's actually quite straightforward to get the information out of your data tables. So this is something that I would start, because most probably you're not thinking about business intelligence if you don't think about growing. And that's great. I mean, you need to grow, and at one point you need to analyze more and more data. So in order to grow properly, you need to have a proper database in place, or data understanding about the data, or usable data, so to say. And where you plug it in, the visualization tool, that's like more a fun part. It's also more costly, and it requires some investments. I mean, it's cool that one of the customers here is using Tableau. That's also my favorite. I think it has a lot of bells and whistles with it, and you can do a lot of things also as a data scientist. It's not only about visualization. It's a little bit difficult to use Tableau for as a self-service tool, but for data analysts, it's great, and also for communicating the data, it has a lot of different options there. But it costs, and it has a subscription fee, and I think, or you buy the whole license. I can't remember, but it is a bigger investment. Something that I have recommended to a smaller startups just to try out the visualizations is Power BI. So it's a Microsoft provided tool, and quite widely also a known tool, and something that just to get your hands a little bit dirty and to understand how this would work automatically, the visualization, then Power BI is something that I would also recommend.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very cool.
But maybe something to add up to that. So I think once you have a working data warehouse and you know how this data is structured and so on, you can easily retrieve the data in an organized way and actually just refresh your Power Pivots, or refresh your pivot tables, and also your charts exactly in PowerPoint. It's still a little bit manual process, and I'm not favoring it, but it's something that you already know. So you already have all the tools in hand actually. So just encourage this as well. But yeah, at one point you have to move on.
Mm-hmm. And I actually would also recommend it or encourage it, because when you start using something, like the best tool is the one you know that the tool you are familiar with is the best one. That's why it's always so difficult to switch from one tool to the other, because the new one is always more cumbersome and doesn't fit well, and it's so forth.
Yeah.
So as you mentioned, that Excel, PowerPoint, we already know these tools, and if you start with them, you get basic understanding what you expect from the graphs, the visualizations, and then you can choose the right tool. But be ready, like that if you are used to Excel, most other tools are not so flexible. This is something I found with working with some companies who want to have like in-house tools for seeing their metrics, that everybody's used to Excel and they want the same flexibility, which is very, very difficult and very costly to do, to have the same level of flexibility with any other tool you use. So be ready to scale down about a bit on your flexibility at first. Otherwise,
completely agree.
Yeah.
And it's a change process as well. I remember first time I used Tableau, I went very often back to Excel, and I was really really disappointed with this very expensive tool. But then again, at one point you kind of have to, maybe, so because it just really outgrows, and Excel you can make a lot of manual mistakes and so on. So there are some threats there. But I agree with Kalev that you don't need a crazy solution right away in place. It's the more important is the mindset. But your data needs to be organized and cleaned up, and you need to understand your metrics very well. Otherwise, it's very your results are not valuable. So that's an important thing to keep in mind.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. So we talked about the goals. We talked about getting started. We talked about a bit about the tools. We had two specific questions. One was like how to merge data from different platforms. Do you have any suggestions there, or is there a specific tool, or it's just that with Python you have to extract the data from different sources?
Exactly. So I think if you want to do it properly, then that's exactly this building the data warehouse part, that you have different source tables or sources as different tables in your database, which you can then connect to each other, most probably with a identifier. So here you need to understand like what is the common denominator between those data tables, and you need to understand the process very well and how this actually works out.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, this is how it would work technically. I mean, again, simpler version, it would be that you just dump it, put it in your Excel sheets, and again, you need to have the denominator, maybe you use a VLOOKUP, and you already have your database. So basically, this is what is happening in the background with Python and the data warehouse.
Mm-hmm. Then we had questions about like data and measurement and models. But there's one question was about should you measure in units or percentages if you have like items you measure can be counted with 100 or less. But is there a point to show it in percentages, or in this case it's more meaningful to have it in units?
I mean, it really depends what you are communicating and to whom. I think I would need to think of a clear example when the percentages don't really work, because I mean, even 1/3 you can say 33.3%, and it's no problem with this, right? So I think it depends a little bit on the exact use case. That it might be misleading, or you are. Or maybe you're not communicating enough. I mean, in terms when you are communicating the percentages, what I have done is also I've always communicated the base number, or like let's say that when you're looking at the conversion rates, then you are looking at what is the pace that is converting. So that would be something that perhaps will help to give a little bit context around there. So maybe just percentages might not, give it away, but I think percentages are just easier to follow very often. So
true.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The second question comes from somebody who has been doing forecasting models. And the question is that how to validate that for your model, you need new sources of parameters. And if you don't have it built yet, then, and it takes effort, it takes some time, costs, and so forth. Then the question is that how to validate my model before I take this big effort and bring to my data warehouse or data lake these new sources of information, and maybe it turns out that it was useless effort, that my model didn't give me better predictions or didn't give me better outcome one I had before.
I mean, I think this question goes a little bit into statistics, that you can always use a sample, and you can validate the sample first. You can use the sample data and to see if it brings you closer than the actual model or not. That's something I would do, perhaps, if I understood now the question in the correct way.
Yeah. Then do you have experience with offline data, that if your sales happen offline and or some customer interaction happens offline, how to get that data into taking into consideration?
That's an interesting point. Nowadays we are so technology driven that I have not thought about it for a long time, but that's an interesting point. Yes, I do have some experience. I mean, very often it happens in marketing, right? Because there are offline channels that you're using, like PR or TV, and somehow, and you're not able to really see it, how many people are coming there, unless you actually ask the customer, where did you come from, and the customer actually answers correctly, not say that just other option as just an option in the questionnaire. What we used to do then, we were looking at the different TV campaigns that we did. It was at the time of Rocket Internet Startup 11, and we kind of measured it back to the peaks. So we were looking at also number of active new customers or new registrations at the time, and we allocated those new registrations, or the abnormal amount of new registrations, to the TV campaign that we didn't do always at the same time. The same thing with radio as well. But that is quite a challenge, I think. I would say. I'm sure that there are people who have cracked it through and have found better predictions for that, but you kind of have to predict and you have to assume quite a lot. Yeah.
Very cool. Then in the beginning, we talked about the business intelligence culture or data culture. There was a question about how to make everybody in your team or organization to take responsibility for first collecting and making the data as clean as possible, and the other is to actually using the data for making decisions, because if people don't feel responsibility that they have to use the best data available, then nobody is going to use it, and everybody thinks that the data is useless because I'm not making any decisions based on it. Any guidance there?
Just maybe some examples from my own experience regarding how to make sure that people are really filling out the forms correctly, or making sure that the customers are coming in cleaned. This is something that is a learning process, and you can only learn, or you can only kind of influence or impact this if somebody actually needs this data. If nobody needs this data, you have no incentive to actually clean it up or make sure that it's cleaned up. But once it starts to be measured, and once it's communicated that this is the base for that data, please make sure that you're checking on if it's a test customer or not, or put this flag, then that becomes more. So this incentive helps a lot in order to keep the data clean, and you don't have to put too many measures in place in order to clean up the data. Another thing, of course, you can set up a lot of controls as a business intelligence, right? So you can look at abnormal emails, or I don't know, have a certain certain list coming in your visualization tool, or in your database, or in your dashboard, where you can see that things are not really as they're supposed to be, and then you just ask somebody to clean up the data retrospectively. Because it's important in order to, especially when you make business decisions on the data, it needs to be clean. And how to actually implement it in a way that it has an impact. So all your metrics, or your KPIs that you're measuring, so that the company can actually, or is following them. I have one really good experience, and I would always do it again. So we had a bonus system, but it wasn't. So in one of the companies I was working for, and it wasn't, I mean, my salary was related to this, but I think it doesn't have to be salary related. For me, it had no impact. It was a very clear call to me what I wanted to, or what I was supposed to achieve this quarter. And so basically what happened was that we had a company goal, or we had 3, 4, I think we had actually more than 5 at the time, but we had a couple of company goals that we wanted to reach. And these company goals were allocated on quarterly basis to the teams. So not to the individuals, but to the teams, because in the end of the day, so the team was doing certain efforts in order to influence the company goal. And that was something that every team lead then decided, or proposed him or herself, and then also was signed off by the CEO. In my case, I mean, business intelligence is a support function, so there is not that much I can do in order to improve that number of active customers, besides, putting the reports. So nobody could keep me really accountable for improving those metrics, but I had all the means in order to help other teams that I thought that could need help in order to do that. So that was one of the things. And then we had like those goals that I needed to achieve and do. And of course, I made my own team members accountable for those goals, because these were team goals, and very often the team members own the projects. So in this sense, I believe in that. I think, but I don't think that you have to punish or maybe necessarily even reward. I mean, rewarding will anyway come, hopefully, if everything works out well. But it's more about the tool to communicate. So what is necessary to keep the company aligned once it has outgrown certain number of employees, which then is very difficult to manage thereafter. Mm-hmm. But and also another thing is to celebrate. So once you have really achieved certain KPI and that you wanted to achieve, it was a company goal, really celebrate. I mean, bake a cake or bang the bell or whatever is in your company culture, but it's something that is very important, because everybody has put an effort in there. Everybody wants to be part of this, and it's important to recognize the effort that the employees have done and also what the company has done.
Yeah, I would really highlight the part of celebration. That too often in startups there's always fires burning left and right, and we are talking about what's messed up, and we forget about encouragement and giving positive feedback and celebrating small wins. But whatever psychology you nowadays read, the biggest thing, or one of the key elements what motivates people is constant feedback and positive successes, small successes along the road, that nobody's waiting for a year to get like a big win. That it doesn't work. That you have to have like small wins on the road, and this motivates your team.
I completely agree. No, that definitely worked very well in my teams previously. So yeah, I definitely encourage this as well.
There was a question about, we talked about like measuring. We talked about how to set up your measurement and data system. Now, further on the road, your models or your data should be able to give you also predictions. But going back to like the business plan or business, starting your business, you have to do some predictions or forecasts. Even if you have no sales, you might have MVP or not, but investors or even yourself, you need some kind of vision of your sales. So what's in your experience in bank and in our startups, how you have made the first predictions when you have no sales?
I still think back of my first business case, which was overambitious, because it's tough. It's not easy. But here, I mean, you are ambitious in the beginning when you start. It's very normal, and you have to be, because in the beginning you need this positive mindset. But market analysis, of course, is here the key, and that's something, business intelligence also sometimes does, and so on. But I think this is something that you can look up, how the competitors or how the rest of the market is doing. Think about certain other assumptions that you can measure, that you can have an access to the data. Look at I think in the Solaris Bank times, we were looking at how many are there potential startups, for instance, because we wanted to offer their services to them, financial startups. What is the expected growth for them? And what did we think, what would be our market share? So basically that was something that we just applied a certain professional opinion, but this is how we kind of got the startups. And because we actually priced the transaction, we were estimating what is the average amount of transactions different level startups are doing. So that was one of the revenue driver for us, or how we got to this. But it requires quite a lot of a market analysis, so something that you need to kind of do your research about and understand the market better, and understand also what are the main metrics. And also try to be realistic. Here is definitely my suggestion. I mean, it's difficult, it's tough to kind of reach the plan in any case, often because there are some, you hope to be faster in your development, or you hope to go faster to a different market, but something else happened, or the market entry wasn't that successful because there was some, I mean, there's always a risk that you don't know or you can't measure, but as much as possible, try to be realistic, or at least make then the very realistic plan and maybe a little bit more optimistic plan that you want to communicate outside of the world, because otherwise it just becomes a depressive that you are not able to reach all of your goals, and you have to redo the business case over and over again. So that's basically what is my experience around that.
Yeah, my suggestion is also that take it as a scenario exercise, that you put down different assumptions, and let's say that if this is going to happen, then I'm going to earn that much of money. If that is going to happen, I'm going to earn much less of money. And also don't do it, that investors actually hate it when you do this. I'm going to take 1% of the global market, and the global market is like $1 trillion, so I'm going to be rich fast. It never happens. Nobody's going to give you 1% of global market. What you can do is in particular niches or cities, you can take 30% of market and become a major player. And then this is more believable. And yeah, in total, at the end of the day, you might have like 1% of total market, but you get there by acquiring 30% in or more in certain smaller niches or markets or locations or whatever, or sales channels or something like this. So try to think it in this way, that where in the next 3 years I could acquire 30% of the market. And so that might also help you to make this exercise more realistic, and not to get into this trap of I take the 1% of dog food market. And
yeah, I like this suggestion, Kalev. I think we have, I mean, in Solaris Bank, we were, as I told you, a little bit ambitious in the beginning, and it was also very, very novel thing that we also did. And I think that's why it was a little bit more complicated to think about, because other fintechs that were in the internet were our friends. It wasn't that much of a city related, but I really like this. And I think here the idea is also like what is measurable, right? So what you can afterwards really measure, and that you can really see that, So what do you think that you can measure? So that's what I wanted to say regarding those assumptions. Good point.
We're running out of time. It's always a pleasure to notice that if you have a fruitful discussion. What are your final suggestions regarding sources, that if a startup wants to learn more about business intelligence, or start to think of KPIs, data storage, and so forth, Python, where to start? What are the good books, good podcasts, good blogs?
Yeah, good question. I'm not. I haven't followed recently any sources, but what I always recommend, and what has really helped for me, and I'm maybe that type of person as well, communicate, talk with other startups, and be in this. Perhaps there are some meetups here in Estonia as well regarding business intelligence topics or data analytics topics. It doesn't matter. It's always good to kind of share ideas and tell what is the state of your company and what are your struggles or daily problems, why you can't get into the analytics, what are the different tools that they're using, and share and communicate around this topic. Everybody's happy to share. It's not a company secret how you are doing things. It's a knowledge that when you discuss, then it just improves. From my experience, I actually created a business intelligence roundtable in Berlin. So I was leading this for some time, and we met every month, and we were discussing very openly about different data analytics topics and different source topics, and it was extremely helpful. So communicate with inside your team, because everybody has different or could have different views, or people have been doing programming or have known these things, and communicate within the startups. It's definitely something that you can share and get inspiration for. Then I mean, what is business intelligence, generally speaking? It's management KPIs, something that you have most probably learned in your school, and you can always refresh your knowledge just Googling around or thinking about even this talent scorecard method. You can think of different KPIs that come up there. And then you can go deeper and look into how those KPIs are contributing or how they actually are broken down. And it's also statistics. So once you really get into like further after you have done the descriptive part, then you actually go into more and more statistical methods and statistical basically statistics and a little bit programming, because you need to do some programming in order to make the data available for you. So basically these are those keywords that I would focus on more than just looking at business intelligence, because business intelligence is seen, it doesn't always help to follow the internet or like some really good blogs, because it can be defined also very differently in your team or in your company. So that's why maybe I don't have a clear suggestion, but yeah, so this would be my recommendations for now. And if I come up with something, I will always, of course, let you know.
Very cool. Just to sum it up, to sum up today's discussion, we talked about how to start with a business intelligence. The vision is important. That what's a vision of business intelligence in your team. Start with descriptive, and it's totally normal to start from there. In case you looked at the upstream case, and suggestions from there are keep things simple, go to your business plan, what drives your revenue, what drives your costs, and put the metrics according to that. And if you run out of ideas, look at the balanced scorecard. There's like tons of different things to measure, but use it as a brainstorming exercise. Don't try to implement all these measures at once. And you should have like actually 3 to 5 focus KPIs. And if you seem to have too much data and it's getting messy, go back to that exercise. That what are our focus 3 to 5 KPIs? It doesn't mean that you don't need any other dashboards you need, but they have to be supportive to making decisions based on these 3 to 5 KPIs. Tools to start with the things you already know. It helps you to understand what kind of better tools you need. So Excel, PowerPoint, these work fine to start gathering the data. And when you actually need business intelligence, it's where you don't know the life stories of all your customers. So mostly it's if you have 1,000 transactions or customers already, that it's necessary. And think through, do you need everything live, or you can do it actually with data dumping at certain points of time. That mostly everybody wants to have things live, but in reality it's not necessary. So you can cut your costs and effort if you don't put everything live first. And when you start to build your data infrastructure, important thing is the cleanness of the data. It's 85% of business intelligence work goes to cleaning up the data, getting it clean and cleaning up it later. So figure it out how you want to do it. You mentioned a few tools like Python to get the data together, PostgreSQL, Tableau, and which is more expensive, but you can also test Power BI, which is a Microsoft tool. It's cheaper. And remember that Excel is much more flexible than any other tool. So in some cases, it's maybe meaningful to maybe even do some analysis in Excel if your data is smaller, but the big things you have to do in Tableau or any other good tool. Testing new models, do a sample, and then decide, is it worth to do the whole thing or not? Offline data, look at the peaks, and you then you can kind of figure it out some way. Building responsibility in your team. The best thing is to make sure that people understand how this data is used and who is using it. And that motivates people for cleaning up data or inserting clean data. And also the bonus systems, or the company goals for the teams, not which are then modified to individual tasks, and but we celebrate as a team if we win, and celebration is important part. That celebrate the small wins, because nobody is going to wait until the big win happens. So you have to find the reasons to celebrate also during the process. Predicting sales, it's always difficult if you have nothing. So start with competition, number of potential customers, expected growth, and market share. And Kalev's idea was that try to figure out in which markets you can get the 30% of market share, that having a 1% of global market, which is measured in trillions, it doesn't really help you. So 30% where you actually have some market power in some segment or channel or country, it actually gives you a more realistic picture. And start with what's measurable also, that things you can measure and things you can't measure, it also helps you make your first predictions. And sources, the best way is to go out and talk with others in meetups, or contacting startups in your network by yourself. And usually how you measure something or how you set up the KPIs, it's not a company secret. So at least in startup world, people are actually easily willing to share this knowledge. And your example from Berlin was that it was relatively easy to put together a roundtable where people monthly gathered and share their experience in business intelligence and data analytics. So this is my summary. Anything to add, Mari?
Perfect summary. Maybe just the last thing to add, it's not maybe related to anything that you said here before, but once you start doing business intelligence and you start using KPIs and different metrics, make sure that everybody understands them in the same way. So that's extremely important, very often forgotten, and once you grow, it's something that you don't know anymore. Like even simple metric, what is an active customer, it can be very, very complex. So this is definitely something that goes hand in hand in business intelligence and is extremely important for communication inside the company. So that's definitely something that I would add.
Very cool. So thank you everybody for listening up. Sorry for technical difficulties this time, but we had roughly 26 listeners, and you can see everybody else can see the recordings later. So I hope you got great insights. I learned a lot. So thank you, Mari, for joining us today.
Thank you, Kalev, for guiding it, and thank you for all of you for those interesting questions. It was great to think along, and thank you for thinking along.
So thank you, and see you around next time.
Yes, thank you. Take care. Stay healthy. Bye-bye.